Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Mashita Binti Zaidi and I'm from Fofarabi. Today I will present about Community and Ecosystem Chapter 9.1. There are a few terms that we need to know in this chapter. The first term is habitat. Habitat is the natural surrounding or the living place of an organism. Next, species. Species is a group of similar organisms able to interbreed and produce offspring. Population is a group of organisms of the same species which live in the same habitat. Next, community. All population of organisms of different species that live in one habitat and interact with each other. Next, ecosystem. Ecosystem is a few communities that live together in a habitat and interact with each other, including non-living components such as water, air, and soil. The last term is niche. Niche is a role or interaction of a species with other component in a habitat. There are two types of niche, which are ecological niche and species niche. Biotic and abiotic component. Biotic component or organism in an ecosystem. For example, producer, consumer, and decomposer. A biotic component, environment factor which can affect the organism in an ecosystem. For example, pH value, temperature, light intensity, topography, microclimates, and air humidity. Now, take a look at a biotic component. The first one is pH value. The pH value of the soil greatly affect the distribution of organisms in a habitat. Most suitable organisms live in natural pH value. Soil is a home to hundreds of million worms and microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. Next, temperature. Small temperature change will lower the rate of metabolism. Most organisms can survive in a temperature range of 20 degrees Celsius to 40 degrees Celsius, but there are also organisms which can live in extreme temperature. For example, foxes can live in the desert with temperature reaching 45 degrees Celsius during the day. And polar bear can live with temperature of negative 14 degrees Celsius. Next factor is light intensity. The intensity of light and the length of time that sunlight radiates in an area greatly affects the distribution of organisms, especially for plants that carry out photosynthesis. For tropical rainforests, taller plants in that are exposed to high light intensity form a canopy provided low light intensity underneath. Only small plants such as ferns can grow under the canopy. And for coniferous forests, lower density of plant due to low light intensity. Plants in coniferous forests are shorter as well as smaller in size. Next, topography. Topography is the physical feature of Earth's surface that includes altitude, gradient, and aspect. Determine humidity, temperature, and light intensity in an ecosystem. The first one is altitude. The higher the altitude, the lower the relative humidity, atmospheric pressure, and oxygen content. At different levels of altitude, plants are different in types, size, and density. For gradient, steeper mountain slopes are easily eroded due to swift water movement. The soil layer becomes thinner and drier. This area has less growth of plants except for some short, thorny shrubs with small and pointed leaves. Aspect refer to the direction in which wind blows and the ray of sunlight. A mountain slope which faces the sea has denser plants compared to the one facing towards the land. This slope also gains more rainfall distribution. The slope that receive more sunlight denser with plants. Next, microclimate. Microclimate refer to the climatic condition of a small area that are different from the surrounding area. Microclimate depends on temperature, humidity, light intensity, heat balance, atmospheric pressure, and water evaporation. The last factors is air humidity. The quantity of water vapor in the air that affects the distribution of organisms in a habitat. More organisms inhabit areas of high humidity. Low air humidity increase water loss from the stoma through transpiration. Transpiration also exerts a cooling effect on the plants to maintain the optimal temperature of enzyme action. There are two types of nutrition which are autotrophic and heterotrophic. In the autotrophic, there are two types of autotrophic. The first part is photoautotrophic and the second one is chemoautotrophic. The heterotrophic is divided into three: saprotrophic, holozoic, and parasitic. Biotic components according to trophic levels consist of organisms that need energy to carry out life processes. Humans and animals obtain energy by eating other organisms, including photosynthesis plants. Therefore, the most important source of energy for all organisms comes from the sun. The component of biosis consists of three groups, which are producer, consumer, and decomposer. Energy flow in the food chain. Organisms in an ecosystem interact with each other in the form of nutritional relationship. The food chain is a sequence of energy transfer from one trophic level to the next trophic level, starting from the producer. So, in the food chain, it starts with the producer and ends with the secondary consumer or the third-tier consumer. The organism will eat the organism from the previous trophic level. Energy is transferred from the organism that it eats to the organism it eats. Organisms that eat other organisms get energy from the body tissue of the organism eaten. This energy transferred to the organism when food is digested and assimilated to form new tissues. Okay, in the food web, usually food web describe the nutrition relationship in a community. It can form from several food chains. Organisms in all food chains are interdependent with each other in aspects of nutrition. Ecological pyramids. There are three types of ecological pyramids, which are pyramid of number, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of energy. Pyramid of numbers. The bottom has the largest number and the first trophic level that represent the number of producers. The next part of the pyramid is the second, third, and fourth trophic level, which represent the number of primary users, secondary users, and third-tier users. Next, pyramid of biomass. The pyramid can be supplied to organisms in the next trophic level. For example, the amount of producer biomass that can be consumed by primary consumer is higher than primary consumer biomass in the ecosystem. Similarly, the total biomass of secondary consumer is lower than primary consumer. The higher to the top of the pyramid, the less the amount of biomass per unit area. The last one is a pyramid of energy. The source of energy in an ecosystem is light energy from the sun that is absorbed by green plants to carry out photosynthesis and convert into chemical energy. Energy will be transferred to the next trophic level when the primary consumer consumes the producer plants. Only 10% of the energy is transferred to the next trophy. 90% of energy is lost to the environment through heat, life processes, excretion, and decontamination. There are two types of interaction among biotic components, which are saprophytism and symbiosis. Saprophytism is an interaction of organisms that obtain food from that organism matter. For example, mushrooms that grow on dead trees. Symbiosis occurs when different species live together and interact with each other, such as mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. Competition occurs when organisms in one habitat compete for basic needs. Predation involves one organism. And now, mangrove ecosystem. For a biotic component, exposed to wave and tides, soft, slippery, muddy, and poorly ventilated soil exposed to strong wind, high salt content in the soil and very low concentration of dissolved oxygen in the water, exposed to high light intensity, seed germination in tidal areas. For biotic component, stork, mushroom, mangrove trees, crab, mudskipper, snake, and proboscis monkey. There are 5 adaptation features of the mangrove trees. The first one is leaves. Have thick cuticle leaf and embedded stomas that can reduce the rate of transpiration. Other leaves can store salt and will fall off when the concentration of stored salt is too much. Next is pneumatophore roots. Pneumatophore roots is short root projection from the soil surface for aeration in areas that are often inundated with water. It can help gas exchange between the submerged roots with the atmosphere through the lenticels. Prop roots grows branching from the bottom of the trunk of a mangrove tree. These roots grip in the soil strongly to provide support against strong winds and waves. Net buttress roots. Buttress root is a type of root with a thickened flake structure to increase the surface area of the base. These roots support trees that grow on soft soil bordering the land. The last one is seeds. Viviparous seeds germinate and grow while still attached to the parent tree. This allows the seed to fall strewn on the muddy ground and not be washed away by the wave. Colonization and succession. The definition of colonization is plants start to conquer an uninhabited areas, breed and form colonies in that area. Definition of succession is a few species of dominant plant in a habitat are gradually being replaced by other species called successor. This is a picture of coastal, middle and inland zone. But what is coastal, middle and inland zone? Okay, coastal zone. This zone is overgrown by a pioneer species. The extensive root system and pneumatophorus help the tree trap mud and organic matter carried by the tide. This leads to a gradual accumulation of mud. As a result, the soil becomes higher and denser. Next, middle zone. The central zone is located along the river near the estuary. Mud trapping causes sedimentation to occur more rapidly. The cliffs become higher and drier due to less overflow of seawater during high tide. Lastly, inland zone. Inland zone is located far inland. The ground becomes higher, harder and only flooded with seawater during high tide. The sedimentation process forms new swamps that project into the sea. The old beach is getting further and further away from sea. The importance of the mangrove ecosystem for protection zone, fishery resources, forestry resources, and food and medicines resources. That's all from me. Thank you.